Hey, Mo.
Is it necessary to work the forearms?
Well, necessary is obviously dependent on what your goal is, right? If you're a bodybuilder and you want, muscular forearms, the answer is yes. But, there's the right way and the wrong way to work the forearms. The first thing I'll tell you is that, like a lot of people carry kettlebells and they feel the fatigue and they think they're developing the forearms. Well, they're developing their grip strength, yes, right? But the idea that that's going to make the forearms bigger, and it might a little bit, is obviously not nearly as much as it would be with some kind of dynamic movement. Again, static tension, isometric tension is less productive than exercise with movement, right? It's been shown time and time again in a variety of studies. In fact, they did one study that showed that you could get more growth using full range of motion with less weight than you can using partial range of motion, which is still more than static, right? Using more weight, right? So the range of motion plays a role in development, more so than the amount of weight you're using. So there's all kinds of examples of people who do itty bitty little movements with a ton of weight, like on their calves or on their forearms, and they never get any growth because they're not using enough range of motion. So it is good to do wrist curls. These muscles are called the hip flexor muscles. The wrist flexor muscles. So this is flexion of the wrist, this is extension of the wrist. These muscles here need to be explained because unless you're looking at an anatomy chart, it's easy to think that this muscle right here is part of what moves the wrist. This muscle right here is called the Brachioradialis, and it stops right there, and it connects over here. In other words, it crosses the elbow joint, but it doesn't cross the wrist. So it plays no role in wrist movement. It cannot, right? So the idea that you're going to develop this muscle by doing reverse wrist curls is mistaken, right? When you do wrist curls, you are going to work the little muscles, not the big brachioradialis, but the little muscles, and they have almost no capacity for growth, period. So you can work them and you'll never see much change at all in those muscles, and unless you're doing some kind of a hammer curl. And by the way, there are people like Phil Heath who have huge brachioradialis, and I'm sure that his genetics just predisposes his brachioradialis to grow whenever he's doing biceps, because that's what it does. It assists in elbow flexion. It assists the bicep in elbow flexion. So you're working your brachioradialis anytime you're working your bicep. How much depends on the wrist position. If you have your palm up, you're working less brachioradialis, but still some. If you turn it into a hammer grip, you're working the most possible activation of brachioradialis. Once you go the other direction, you actually get less of everything. You've done studies on this, EMG studies. There's less activation of the bicep and the brachioradialis when you turn your palm away. It's a weakening angle. So this is good. This gives you about, I would say, maybe 30% brachioradialis, 70% bicep. If you move it away, you might get more like 80-20, 90-10, something like that. But you certainly will not get any brachioradialis from reverse wrist curls. So when it comes to forearms, I would say do mostly these and mostly hammer.
There is an exercise that you go this way and then the negative in reverse.
Some people call that a Zottman curl. Right now, there must have been some guy named Zottman somewhere along the way that, liked it and did it, and he might have had good arms, and everyone goes, hey, he's got the secret exercise, right? Well, again, if you're going up like this and down in a hammer grip, that's okay, but it's not better than just doing hammer curls. Or, what I would say is, if you don't care much about your brachioradialis and you care more about your bicep, do most of your sets with your palms up. If you care slightly less about your bicep and slightly more about your brachioradialis, do most of your sets with a hammer grip. But it's never good. Even if you're doing this kind of, it's never good to turn your palm away from you. For starters, it tends to make your elbow go out, which means you've now changed the alignment, right? When you're doing this kind of curl, you'll notice there's a straight line, a plane through which the movement travels and through which the resistance travels that overlaps with the origin and the insertion of the muscle. That's alignment. As soon as you do this, all of a sudden you've got a rotational movement happening at the shoulder. You're diminishing the percentage of load on the bicep. You're not in line with your origin and your insertion. You've messed up the alignment, right? So you've skewed the benefit a lot. So I would recommend never turning your palm down, hammer grip or palm up grip, or percentages in between. Sometimes a 45-degree angle is good, and sometimes one is more comfortable than the other. But the key to forearm development is really just this muscle right here, which is either with a barbell or with dumbbells, but nothing reverse. Okay. Unless, of course, you need that kind of, like if you're a, let's say, a batter, you might need that because you're using some of this wrist action when you're swinging the bat, right? So if you're an athlete that uses your wrist in that backward direction, you might want to do reverse wrist curls for the sake of function, but you will not get much growth at all from doing reverse wrist curls.
And using the bar with the reverse grip?
Well, I wouldn't do reverse curls, but I would use that easy curl bar for the reverse because it's hard to keep the hinges on the same line when you're doing it this way. So you're better off doing something like, or with dumbbells for the wrist, for the comfort of the wrist. But whether you're using an easy curl bar or a straight bar, and by the way, a straight bar reverse curl is horrible. It's impossible to turn your wrist completely. I mean, on a wrist curl, you at least have some relief from that, but it's still not a good exercise, not a productive exercise, as compared to other better exercises.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.